Case Book of Sherlock Holmes, 1927, Episode 5, Thor Bridge. Picture yourself at 221B Baker Street in October 1900, when Holmes receives a letter from Neil Gibson, the famous Gold King, an American mining magnate worth millions who settled in Hampshire. Mr. Holmes, the letter reads, I am accused of no crime, but my children's governess stands charged with murdering my wife. The evidence against her appears overwhelming, yet I know with absolute certainty she is innocent. I need you to prove what I cannot, that Miss Grace Dunbar didn't kill Maria Gibson. My children are suffering, and an innocent woman faces the gallows. Please help. Holmes reads this aloud to Watson, who immediately recognizes the name. Neil Gibson, the Gold King. I've read about him. Ruthless businessman, made his fortune in Brazilian gold mines, famous for crushing competitors without mercy. The newspapers have been full of the case. His wife was found shot dead on their estate, and the governess was discovered moments later attempting to throw the murder weapon into the lake. It seems quite open and shut. Does it? Holmes muses. A governess murders her employer's wife, then, instead of fleeing or hiding the weapon, she walks calmly to a bridge and throws the gun into a lake in full view of witnesses. Watson, when has guilt ever been so obligingly obvious? I smell something peculiar about this case. Perhaps a frame so perfect it becomes suspicious by its very perfection. Think about this, detective. Sometimes evidence that appears too perfect, too convenient, too damning, should raise suspicions rather than confirm guilt. A real murderer would hide the weapon, establish an alibi, create confusion. This governess apparently did none of those things. Why? Neil Gibson arrives that afternoon, a massive man in his 50s, with the bearing of someone accustomed to commanding and being obeyed. His face shows genuine distress beneath his normally imperious expression. Mr. Holmes, thank you for seeing me. I'll pay whatever you ask. Money is meaningless if I cannot save Miss Dunbar. She's innocent, I swear it. Holmes observes him carefully. Mr. de Gibson, the obvious question, why are you so certain of her innocence? The evidence appears quite damning. She was found at the scene, attempting to dispose of the weapon. She had motive, yet your wife treated her badly, I understand. Many would say her guilt is self-evident. Gibson's face flushes with anger and something else. Guilt, perhaps. Miss Dunbar is incapable of murder. She's gentle, kind, devoted to my children. Yes, my wife Maria treated her cruelly. Maria was jealous, you see, because... He stops, struggling with something painful. Because I fell in love with Miss Dunbar. Not an affair, understand. Nothing improper occurred. But I couldn't hide my feelings, and Maria saw them. She made Miss Dunbar's life miserable out of spite. Can you see the complexity emerging? A love triangle. The wealthy husband, the bitter wife, the innocent governess, caught between them. Classic ingredients for murder, which is precisely why the case against Grace Dunbar seems so convincing. But Holmes senses something deeper. Tell me exactly what happened, Holmes requests. Every detail, no matter how trivial. Gibson recounts the tragic day. It was 3 days ago, around 4 p.m. Maria sent a note to Miss Dunbar asking her to meet at Thor Bridge, a stone bridge on our estate that crosses a narrow gorge. Miss Dunbar went obediently, though she dreaded these confrontations. Maria enjoyed humiliating her. When Miss Dunbar arrived at the bridge, Gibson continues, she found Maria already dead, shot through the head, lying on the bridge. Miss Dunbar panicked, saw the revolver nearby, and foolishly picked it up. She heard someone coming, and in her panic tried to throw the gun into the gorge, but she was seen by our groundskeeper, who raised the alarm. Watson interjects. But if she found Mrs. Gibson already dead, why not simply call for help? Why handle the weapon and try to dispose of it? Gibson looks miserable. She's told the police she panicked, couldn't think clearly. She knew of my feelings for her. I knew everyone would assume she had motive. She thought disposing of the weapon might... I don't know what she thought. Fear makes people irrational. Holmes asks the crucial question. The note from your wife asking Miss Dunbar to meet her. Has it been found? Gibson nods. Yes, the police have it. Written in Maria's hand, clearly requesting the meeting at Thor Bridge at 4 p.m. It's additional evidence of premeditation. They claim Miss Dunbar lured Maria there to kill her. Interesting, Holmes says. Your wife wrote asking Miss Dunbar to come, yet the prosecution claims Miss Dunbar was the one doing the luring. That's a logical inconsistency worth exploring. Mr. Gibson, I'll need to visit your estate, examine the bridge, interview witnesses, and speak with Miss Dunbar if possible. When can you arrange this? Think about what Holmes has already identified. The note contradicts the prosecution's theory. If Maria Gibson requested the meeting, she wasn't lured to her death. Either the prosecution is wrong about premeditation or something else entirely happened at Thor Bridge. They traveled to Gibson's Hampshire estate the next day, a sprawling property with manicured grounds, stables, and in the distance, the notorious Thor Bridge. It's an ancient stone structure, narrow and dramatic, spanning a deep gorge with a stream flowing 20 feet below. The perfect setting for tragedy. Holmes examines the bridge minutely, crawling on hands and knees, measuring distances, studying angles. Watson, note the position where Mrs. Gibson's body was found here, approximately center of the bridge. The shot entered her left temple, angled slightly downward, exiting the right side. The revolver was found here, 3 feet away. Miss Dunbar was apprehended here, at the bridge's end, about to throw the weapon into the gorge. The official theory, Holmes continues, is that Miss Dunbar shot Mrs. Gibson, dropped the weapon in shock, then recovered it, and attempted disposal when she heard someone approaching. But Watson, look at this. What's missing from this scenario? Watson examines the scene carefully. I don't see any blood spatter on Miss Dunbar's clothing, as there surely would be from a close-range headshot. Exactly, Holmes exclaims. A gunshot to the head at close range produces considerable blood spatter, yet Miss Dunbar's clothes were examined and showed no such staining. The prosecution explains this by suggesting she shot from several feet away, but that contradicts the powder burns found on Mrs. Gibson's temple, which indicate very close range, inches, not feet. Not. Can you see the contradiction? The physical evidence suggests both close range, powder burns, and equidistance, no blood spatter on the accused. Both cannot be true simultaneously, which means the official theory is wrong. But what actually happened? Holmes interviews the groundskeeper who discovered the scene. Tell me exactly what you saw in precise sequence. The man recalls, I was working nearby and heard a shot. Loud crack, unmistakable. I ran toward the bridge and saw Miss Dunbar standing there, gun in hand, looking terrified. Mrs. Gibson was lying on the bridge, clearly dead. Miss Dunbar saw me and tried to throw the gun into the gorge, but I shouted, and she dropped it instead. How much time elapsed between the shot and your arrival? Holmes asks. Seconds, minutes? The groundskeeper considers. Couldn't have been more than 30 seconds. I was very close by. Holmes nods. So Miss Dunbar shot Mrs. Gibson, then stood there for 30 seconds before attempting to dispose of the weapon? Why wait? Think about this timeline, detective. If Grace Dunbar murdered Maria Gibson, she had perhaps 15 seconds to react before the groundskeeper arrived. Yet she apparently stood frozen, then only belatedly tried to dispose of evidence. Does that sound like calculated murder or confused panic? Holmes requests to interview Grace Dunbar in the county jail where she awaits trial. She's a young woman of about 25, refined and educated, showing the strain of her ordeal but maintaining dignity. "Mr. Holmes," she says quietly, "I didn't kill Mrs. Gibson. I know how damning the evidence appears, but I swear on everything holy I found her dead, panicked, made terrible decisions, but I didn't shoot her." "Tell me about the note," Holmes requests. "Mrs. Gibson asking you to meet her at the bridge." Grace's face shows remembered dread. She'd been increasingly cruel in recent weeks, making veiled threats. "The note said she wanted to discuss my future position in the household. I knew it meant more humiliation. But I had to go. I was in her employ, dependent on her goodwill. When I reached the bridge," Grace continues, "I saw her lying there, blood on the stones. The gun was beside her. I don't know why. I picked it up. Shock, confusion. Then I heard running footsteps and panicked. I thought, everyone knows Mr. Gibson cares for me. They'll think I did this. So I tried to throw the gun away. Stupid, I know, but I wasn't thinking clearly." Holmes asks a peculiar question. "Miss Dunbar, when you found Mrs. Gibson's body, did you notice anything unusual about the bridge itself? Any objects, marks, anything that seemed out of place?" Grace thinks hard. There might have been a mark on the stone railing, as if something had been tied there recently, but I was so focused on Mrs. Gibson, I can't be certain. Can you guess where Holmes's mind is going? He's noticed something about the bridge that others have missed, some physical detail that will unravel the entire mystery. Watson watches his friend closely, recognizing that peculiar intensity that means Holmes has seen the truth. Back at the bridge, Holmes examines the railing where Grace mentioned seeing a mark. "Watson, hand me your magnifying glass." He studies the stone carefully, then produces a piece of string from his pocket and begins a curious experiment, tying the string to the railing, attaching a weight to the other end, and letting it dangle over the side of the bridge. "Observe, Watson," Holmes says. "If I tie this string here and let the weight hang down, it dangles just above the water. Now, if I pull the string taut and secure it somehow, yes, like this, and then attach another weight to this end, creating tension." He works quietly for several minutes, constructing something that looks like a peculiar physics experiment. "Now watch," Holmes says dramatically. He triggers his apparatus, and suddenly the string snaps, the weight drops into the gorge below, and Watson understands with a flash of insight what Holmes has discovered. "Good God, Holmes," Watson exclaims. "A suicide device. Mrs. Gibson shot herself, but arranged the evidence to make it appear Miss Dunbar had murdered her. The string was attached to the gun, stretched taut. When she shot herself, the gun was pulled away from her body and dropped into the gorge, except the string broke prematurely, leaving the gun on the bridge instead of in the water, where it was meant to disappear." Holmes nods with satisfaction. "Precisely, Watson. Maria Gibson committed suicide, but framed it as murder, specifically implicating Miss Dunbar. She knew her husband loved the governess. In her final act of spite, she arranged to destroy the woman she saw as her rival. She wrote the note to ensure Miss Dunbar came to the bridge. She positioned herself where the groundskeeper would arrive quickly after the shot. She tied the string carefully so the gun would be pulled away and dropped into the gorge, making it appear someone shot her and then fled. But," Holmes continues, "the string broke too soon, probably because the weight of the gun was slightly more than she'd calculated, or the knot wasn't secure enough, so the gun remained on the bridge instead of disappearing into the water. When Miss Dunbar arrived and found the body, her panicked attempt to dispose of the weapon appeared to be a murderer caught in the act. Think about the diabolical cleverness of this plan. Maria Gibson was willing to kill herself just to frame Grace Dunbar for murder. The depth of her hatred, jealousy, and desire for revenge was so profound that she chose death if it meant destroying her rival. It's almost incomprehensible malice. Watson is horrified. That's monstrous, to kill yourself just to see an innocent woman hang? What kind of person does that? Holmes's expression is grim. A person consumed by jealousy and rage, who sees no other way to punish the people she believes wronged her. Maria Gibson's marriage was unhappy. Her husband's affections had transferred to another woman, and she felt powerless. This suicide frame was her way of regaining power by destroying them both from beyond the grave. Holmes presents his findings to the authorities, complete with physical demonstrations of how the string mechanism would work. He shows how the mark on the railing matches string friction, how the gun's position makes no sense for murder, but perfect sense for his suicide theory, and how the timeline and blood spatter evidence contradict the murder scenario. The prosecution initially resists. They've built their case on Grace Dunbar's guilt, but Holmes's evidence is overwhelming. They search the gorge below the bridge and find fragments of string caught on rocks, along with a small piece of lead weight. The case against Grace Dunbar collapses, and she's released immediately. So, tell me, Detective, did you suspect suicide before Holmes revealed it? Could you have conceived of someone framing their own murder to destroy an innocent person? It's one of the most malicious acts imaginable, using your own death as a weapon. Neil Gibson is overcome with gratitude and guilt. Mr. Holmes, you've saved Miss Dunbar's life, but I feel responsible. If I'd been stronger, hadn't let my feelings show, Maria might not have been driven to this. Holmes's response is compassionate, but firm. Mr. Gibson, your wife chose her own path. You're responsible for your feelings, not for her extreme reaction to them. She could have sought divorce, separation, any number of solutions. Instead, she chose murder by proxy, attempting to turn the law into her instrument of revenge. Grace Dunbar, now free, meets with Gibson and Holmes. Mr. Gibson, I'm grateful for your help, but I cannot remain in your employ. Too much has happened. I need to start fresh, somewhere, without these memories. Gibson, showing more humility than he's probably displayed in decades, accepts her decision. I understand. Let me at least provide references and financial support until you find a new position. The case ends with Grace Dunbar taking a teaching position at a girls' school in Scotland, far from Hampshire and its painful associations. Neil Gibson dedicates himself to his children who've lost their mother in the worst possible way, not just to death, but to the knowledge that she tried to murder an innocent woman. Watson records the case in his journal. Thor Bridge stands as a reminder that the most dangerous place isn't always the darkest alley or the criminal den, but sometimes the human heart consumed by jealousy and hate. Maria Gibson's final act was more villainous than any murderer we've encountered because she weaponized her own death and attempted to make the law her accomplice in judicial murder. Holmes reflects. The case demonstrates why we must always question the obvious, Watson. Evidence that appears overwhelming can be manufactured. Guilt that seems certain can be engineered. Our duty is to look beyond appearances to the physical facts that cannot lie. Angles of bullets, patterns of blood, marks on stone railings, physics and logic don't deceive. Only humans do.